the left is really not in a good place right now. So many of, like, the lefty figures that I used to respect when I first started doing content have started getting into this, like, weird trend of pushing for, like, pseudo-leftist populist LARPing, for lack of a better way to phrase it, for no other thing to call it. For example, I used to follow this channel. I don't know what happened. I haven't spoken to this person much, but I just know I followed them on Twitter, and I think I was subbed to their channel. They go by Xexizy, Xexizy, and they put out a video about a month ago that people have sent to me with the, request that I cover it, called Don't Vote. Now, as you all know, I am very against the sentiment of not voting. Now, I don't know if this will be a reference to just the primaries, which would be a lot less problematic. I don't really care if people don't vote in the primaries, especially this election. It's far less important. But when it comes to the general election, and obviously the other tertiary things on the ballot, I think it's very important that you get your ass to the voting booth, or at the very least, order a mail-in ballot to send in, like, a couple weeks early. Get it out of the way. Hell, get it out of the way before Election Day if you can. Your vote will get counted even sooner if you get it done faster. And so, like, yeah, I'm very much against the idea that you shouldn't vote, but I am willing to hear out this video. I do know that some of Xexizy's content before claiming you shouldn't vote has been well-reasoned, so maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe I'll learn the actual arcane secret knowledge of why you actually shouldn't vote, and becoming completely politically voiceless within our country is actually the most productive thing you can do as a leftist. I'm sure this will have nothing to do with the fact that lefty channels like this one and mine all blew up the most during the tail end of Trump's presidency when the election was coming up.
I've made efforts to separate myself from the stereotypically far-left position of condemning voting. I've admitted that voting doesn't take long, it's fine to encourage somebody to vote who might not otherwise, and that generally there is a meaningful difference between the two major parties in the US and the UK.
Okay. We're off to a good start. However, I'm worried we're about to get a massive but. And as a wise man in Game of Thrones once said, nothing said after the word but ever mattered.
My skepticism around voting has come from the inclination of various leftists to put their full organizational weight behind liberal
Nothing said before. You know what I mean.
candidates like Biden or Stanmer, and end up being subsumed into these parties that hate us and our beliefs and leave our own goals unpursued. Ultimately,
Okay, this is delusional. I'm sorry. While maybe in the UK this is the case, so maybe I'm a little offbeat when it comes to UK politics. In the US, this is about as off-kilter as you could possibly be. The Democratic Party, especially Biden, has been the most appealing to, like, far left politics I've ever seen. Do you know what the response from the left is right now to Biden calling, and the Democrats calling for a ceasefire in Gaza? The Democrats are now doing exactly what they wanted. And do you know what, do you want to know what, like, lefty posters are framing it as? Dog. Prepare to fucking rage. If you've been following this whole, like, the way the left has handled this, prepare to fucking rage. This is from the majority
This is Chuck
report.
Schumer, yes.
But don't worry, it's not Sam Cedar being an idiot, it's Emma being an idiot. Not unheard of. Democrats pivot to blaming Netanyahu as scapegoat for Gaza disaster. The Democrats are calling out Israel, its leadership, and its treatment of the Palestinians now. And so the pivot from lefties, because the Democrats must always be bad. The Democrats can never reach the bar. They can never allow the bar to be reached by the Democrats where they can say, you know what, the Democrats are actually pretty good right now. I support the Democrats. That'll never be a thing they can do. That's not a thing they can actually, like, say ever, like, no matter what. And so the bar is always raised. So now it's the Democrats pivot to blaming Netanyahu. They are blaming Netanyahu. They are calling out Israel. The thing you wanted wasn't the criticism for all these months that the Democrats won't call out Israel. They won't say anything. They won't even say ceasefire. Now Biden is literally organizing a, in his words, ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. And it's like, well, he's not doing enough. He didn't do it sooner. Don't care. Yeah, I literally, my brain is going to melt. I'm sorry. I get that Biden is not great. He is not perfect, but we have two choices, and abstaining from voting does not make it so that you are abstaining from the effects of who is president. You have a responsibility. You are a bad person if you do not vote. You simply are. If you do not vote to stop the Republican from taking power, you are a bad person. Fundamentally, you are a morally bad person. You lack moral character. You simply do. You are the kind of person who would watch a toddler get run over in the street.
Though I'm still arguing for a position of balance rather than outright condemnation. That being said, I believe recent developments have left this analysis obsolete.
It's gonna be Gaza. It's gonna be Israel and Gaza.
And that radicalism must now take a much more ruthless position to keep up with the changing consciousness of the wider public.
There is absolutely no universe, by the way, in which like radical far left like young people have enough political will in order to make the Democratic Party give in to them with a threat of not voting. Because A, so many people that are like part of this far left young demographic already don't vote. So actually, let's look at the voting turnout numbers. Voting turnout US by age. This is going to be weighted a little bit by the fact that we saw the highest voter turnout for young people ever in 2020. So let's see. In 1988, the highest voter turnout... Wow, yeah, it's by a lot. By a lot. 18 to 29-year-olds have a 43% voter turnout, compared to 60-plus-year-olds who are vastly majority Republican who have a 71% voter turnout. While 45 to 59 and 30 to 44-year-old millennials and Gen Xers and whatnot fall within a 56 and 66% voter turnout rate. So if you're a politician, if you're like a Democrat and you look at the 18 to 29-year-old demographic, mind you, 25 to 29-year-olds are probably weighing a lot of that 43% higher. Like if we could get it broken down to like 18 to like 23, which really is where the majority of these young radically progressive people are, I guarantee you we slice that number down by half. The fact that there is such low voter turnout among these young radically progressive people already, and you are now trying to say that threatening lower voter turnout would somehow result in the Democrats saying, you know what, we gotta change our policies to appeal more to these young people. No, that's not going to happen. Politicians appeal to voters. When has any politician ever said, we got to appeal more to the non-voters? No, they want to appeal more to the voters. And so they're going to look at these demographics. They're going to look at 30 to 44 and 45 to 59-year-olds voting at a 56 to 66% rate already. And at best, they're going to try to like appeal with more like marginal, like center-leaning policies and appeal more to the center. Or if we're really unlucky, they're going to look at that 71% voter turnout among 60-year-olds and try to get even more conservative and become the old Republican Party. Worst case scenario is, in response to the young left-wing people refusing to vote, the Democratic Party says, okay, you know what? The Republicans have gotten so crazy and have become the such far-right party, we're going to move the Democratic Party right, which will be really easy once the squad gets booted out of power, because AIPAC is literally like has their sights set on them in this election, is going to boot them out of their seats with like the biggest well-funded effort to destroy a group of people's political careers ever. The Democratic Party very well might just decide, you know what, we're going to become the old Bush-era Republican Party. We're going to fill that gap that disappeared, or that appeared whenever Trump made the Republican Party how it is now. Like the idea that making like not voting among a demographic that's already not that appealing to try and pander to because of the already low voter turnout, despite the radically loud screaming LARPing among that demographic for how important politics is. It's why the young left are so, like, the young Gen Z left are so ineffective. They vote at like half the rate that 60-year-olds do. A 20-year-old person has no excuse not to go out and vote when a 70-year-old or a 60-year-old goes out and votes at a higher rate. Are you fucking serious? Are you telling me people in their 20s and their late teens in college have less means to go out and vote than someone in their 60s or 70s, and I'm sure they could be doing school or a job, but let's be real. A lot of these people are just like, I don't wanna, oh, it's too hard. You know how Gen Z is. Gen Z is like famously non-functional. Like, come on, let's not fool ourselves. Let's not fool ourselves about the type of person who is advocating for you not to vote. They were never going to vote anyway.
The ongoing genocide in Gaza has led to a noticeable shift in attitudes in liberals and leftists alike across the West. We've had to watch as our political leaders march lockstep with Israel's brazen attempts to displace Palestinian people with no outlet.
It's all, this is from a month ago. So now that the Democrats and Biden have like led the charge to stop what's happening between Israel and Gaza, as I just featured, the narrative has switched. The bar has been raised for the Democrats, the bar that can never be reached. And now it's the Democrats calling out Israel and calling out its leadership and its treatment of the Palestinians is pivoting, diverting blame, rather than before when it was they're being silent.
For resistance in conventional politics. And then with the elections in the US and the UK coming up this year, this is naturally...
You couldn't vote in 2016 because you had no driver's license? Unless there are voter ID laws in your area that restrict you, a state-issued ID is fine. I don't have a driver's license. I have voted in every election since I got my driver's license and was 18. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I like get a state-issued ID, Uber to the DMV. They take a picture. I couldn't go anywhere. Okay. So, I'm sure there are reasons. However, there are a lot of Gen Zers give a whole lot of reasons for why they couldn't go out and vote. But meanwhile, 70-year-olds go out, or 60-year-olds go out and vote at a 70% rate. I don't know, guys. It feels like those decrepit-ass boomers should be less capable than people in the prime of their lives.
Leading people to question whether or not these genocide enablers even deserve our votes to begin with. And then from there,
obviously being
underage
for voting
the
doesn't
typical
count.
Discourses of harm reduction and lesser evil voting spin off too. Today then, I want to make the case explicitly against voting as the strongest strategy that the left currently has available.
Hilarious. Go on.
Now, because my usual video production process apparently takes months or even years now, I'm slapping this together at a much lower production quality, just so I can get it out while it still has some relevancy. For anyone wondering, I am also working on a much longer, much fancier video on the side, but that's still a bit off from here. So I just realized my neck is purple because...
Why is relevancy a word? Why did people start saying relevancy? Because it's just relevance. Adding an extra syllable is more work and wrong. When did that become a thing? It's like irregardless. It's just regardless. Why did people start adding the ear to it? It's more syllables, it's more breath, more work, and wrong. How'd that catch on?
My floor LED is on, and it's too late to turn it off, so... If you're wondering, I'm not diseased, that's just why. So
I was wondering about the neck turning purple. I was really confused, like, is that a camera error? Is there like a very thin, narrow light shining onto their neck? I don't know.
Of the current moment is that the rejection to vote is the most effective path towards radicalization. Due to being presented a choice between different genocide enablers, a shift in attitude against voting has taken place for many younger liberals and leftists alike.
The framing of this is so virtue signally, right? Between two genocide enablers, as if this is something new. What really kind of bugs me about all of this recent explosion, all right, chat, I imagine many of you guys aren't into sports. Neither am I. The only sport I'm into is swimming, because I was into swimming. I guess technically MMA, because I did jiu-jitsu as well. Any sport that I've actively participated in, I find interesting because I know it. I've done it. I know the mechanics of it, and so I'm interested in seeing people do it well. And so swimming and MMA are my favorite. But when it comes to like basketball, football, baseball, etc., where there's like teams associated with a given city or region of the country, something I've noticed is a trend is, let's say somebody has their team, right? Like, I'm not good at sports, but let's say, for example, someone's a fan of the Cubs. Now, the Cubs, up until 2015 or 16, I think it was 2015, I think it was like literally the one thing Back to the Future got right. Up until 2015, except for Trump, they also got that right. Up until like 2015, the Cubs hadn't won the World Series in a long ass time, right? And so the Cubs were seen as a pretty shitty team in terms of performance, like in the World Series and like the grand scheme of things. But then in 2015, and my stepdad was a Cubs fan, so I was very aware of this. He was quite thrilled. Never was the house louder. The Cubs fucking won the World Series, right? And then all of a sudden, everyone was a Cubs fan. You know? Just overnight. Just that the sun went down one night and nobody gave a fuck about the Cubs. Next morning comes up and everybody is all of a sudden a Cubs fan. Every coworker at work all of a sudden has a Cubs like koozie on their water thing. Everybody's got a Cubs hat on, a Cubs shirt on. It's like, damn, it's like so many Cubs fans just emerged overnight out of nowhere because the Cubs happen to be popular because they've just won the World Series. This happens all the time in sports, supposedly. Like, team that nobody gives a fuck about, like individual person has always been a loyal fan, and then all of a sudden that team has a lucky season or a good season, and like everybody is a fan of the team out of nowhere because they're just bandwagoning and it's super annoying. That's how I kind of feel when it comes to the Israel-Gaza conflict. I don't know if Zig Zizi was like, you know, non-outspoken about this before, but like I've done content calling out and talking about Israel and its treatment of the Palestinians for a long time. Notably, like, I remember a time back in 2019 where I was covering Ben Shapiro and going over his, like, statements about the Palestinians and how he supports the genocide of the Palestinians by Israel, and going over it back then in, like, 2019 in the first year of my channel. And I feel like I've been, like, a pretty consistent knower of the fact that any given sitting president of the United States has been complicit in the genocide of the Palestinians, because this has been going on for decades. And it's not just Palestine and the Palestinians that are being genocided, with the U.S. Enabling it, by the way. There have been many, 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 many genocides happening at the same time, and even across history that the U.S. has either been complicit in or downright supported or funded or armed. This is not anything new. Every U.S. president that has ever sat at the Oval Office has had blood on their hands. This is just the reality of politics when you are a citizen of the country that thinks it's the world police. So when you've all of a sudden got all these lefties coming along who are making the argument that now is when we have to put our foot down and we have to go against these two genocide enablers, it's like, where the fuck have you been? What the fuck changed? Like, did all the kids that were dying for all these decades when, like, other Republicans and Democrats were president, did they not matter? But right now, because the whole internet is talking about Palestine and Israel, and any post about it gets a bunch of likes on Twitter, and you get a lot of virtue signal points for talking about the plight of the Palestinians, is that the only reason why you're talking about this, or do you actually care? Because it feels like it's just all of this hyper-aggressive don't vote for blue no matter who sentiment really blew up in regards to Israel-Palestine, and once it became popular to talk about after the October 7th attack. And yeah, it just feels so disingenuous. It feels like my sports analogy. Like, people are just jumping on the bandwagon and disingenuously virtue signaling about a really fucked up tragedy, but they're not actually willing to do anything that would prevent it from getting worse. That's the thing. The Democrats, even if they don't make things better, Trump has outright proudly stated he will make it worse for the Palestinians. He will back Israel harder than the Democrats could ever dream of.
With the previously unthinkable of not voting for anybody being taken seriously. What's special about this is that not voting is a fundamentally illogical, nonsensical position, yet despite this, people are being drawn to it anyway. This is because, in a political landscape such as ours, still mired in capitalist realism, where alternatives can scarcely be imagined, let alone be made feasible, resistance can often manifest as a desire to reject society altogether. In a sense, the only response to a world in which revolution or even reform feel hopelessly out of grasp is to simply declare, I cannot imagine a new future, but I don't need one to reject the present existence anyway.
Oh my god, this is so fucking cringe, dude. Oh my fucking... No wonder so much of the online left is failing right now. You ever see, like, one of those scenes in a movie where there's, like, a train, and they have like the train is headed straight for like a cliff because like the tracks go right off a cliff. And then there's one, like all the characters run to the back of the train and they're in the final boxcar and they pull like the bolt up, despite the fact that's not physically possible when a train's moving. They pull the bolt up to let the train release the final like caboose cart to like sort of fall back, right? With the brakes, so it's not being pulled forward by the rest of the weight of the train. And like all the train falls off the cliff except for the one cart where all the main characters are, and it like grinds to a halt. That's how I feel, but I'm that final cart with the rest of the online left at the moment. It feels like so much of the online left is getting like absolutely shit on by the majority of the internet, or just going down a path that is just so dumb and wrong with their takes or behavior that it's not going to end well. Like, this line of thought is not going to gain popularity and vibe out well outside of a very niche group of online people. Most left-leaning people in America are not like us or like this person. They are the types of people who elected Biden. How many times did you hear from people like this back in 2020 that brown people don't support Biden, they support Bernie, and yet the Hispanic and black vote was like overwhelmingly in favor of Biden even during the primaries? Like, the idea that like black and brown Americans were like falling behind Bernie was a complete made up fucking fantasy by internet lefties. In reality, like, massive amounts of support went to Biden instead. This thought process that like POC in America, they're waiting for the revolution, they're waiting for land back. It's like, no, they want the Republican who is actively going to make their lives worse to not get elected, because they're not fucking stupid, they're not LARPing, and this shit actually affects them. And they're adults, for the most part, as well.
The urge not to vote is one such instance of a blind resistance. The desire to escape the perpetual dilemma of lesser evilism.
There is no escape. There is no escape. Not voting does not mean escaping. That's not how that works. Not voting does not mean you are opting out of politics. You are still affected by the policies. When the death squads show up, they won't say, oh, you didn't vote for us, or you didn't vote at all? Oh, we'll leave you be then. You opted out of politics. Now that we've, the right has conquered the country, we're just going to leave you alone because you opted out.
By rejecting its...
Are they basically arguing like, yes, let the right win, opt out, let it happen, and then let them come kill you because who cares, the world sucks and there's no winning, there's no revolution, so just give up? Is that literally what they're saying right now? Resign yourself to giving up and letting the right win and kill you, possibly, because there is no hope for revolution. That is what we're watching, a Doomer video right now, disguised as a LARPy revolution video.
Premise outright. This desire is, again, raw, it's base, it's unrefined, it's often ill thought out, but this is exactly what defines it as a complete rejection of existing society. Because in rejecting these systems, we also reject their rules, their internal logic, and their entire framework of what makes sense.
I reject your rules. Here, let me show you guys some footage of somebody who rejects the rules of the legal framework, guys. Sovereign citizen arrest compilation. There we go. Let's see some examples of people who think they can opt out of the system.
It's gonna be at Hallam and Catalina.
This is how it goes for you when you opt out of the system.
Blue Ford truck displaying some kind of sovereign citizen looking tag. Can you start us a second, please?
Even the cops recognize this shit now and immediately are like, oh boy, we got a sovereign citizen here. This is about to be fun. Am I gonna get to break someone's jaw, or am I gonna get to catch a body today? Let's find out.
Treaty. Geneva Convention neutral zone transport vehicle. That's not how this works, man.
I like how the cop's just like, that's not how this works, man. All right.
You know what the flag upside down means?
Here, I want to skip to when it starts getting good. Here, the approaching of the car is what you want to see here. You want to see when they approach and interact. That's what we're here for.
You know what the flag upside down means?
No.
It's a sign of distress. Hey boss, how you doing? Not too bad. Deputy of the Sheriff's Office.
He doesn't have... By the way, this guy doesn't have valid tag on, like a valid plate or tag on his car. He is actively breaking the law, quite seriously so, in his Ford F-150.
I just got pulled over.
Hey, so the reason why I'm stopping you, boss, I didn't recognize the tag that was on your vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have your driver's license registration with you?
Here you go. I got the paperwork right here. Where's the paperwork?
This is Florida.
Here. All right.
It's where?
Yeah, let me see.
I don't even need to check. I can just tell. I can look at Florida and see it by sight.
Here. Someone's talking.
It's on speaker.
There it goes.
Okay, where's your driver's license, boss?
That's for... No, I don't need my window down.
I'm sorry. So, do you have a driver's license?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, what's your name, boss? I don't see your name on here. Can you point it to me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not how this works. Where's your driver name at?
I just didn't him the paperwork.
This is shit he printed out to declare he's a sovereign citizen and he doesn't need to have a driver's license, by the way. He is breaking the law right now. These are people who are so ego-driven and delusional, they believe that, like, the world actually bends to their will, and they are the main character. Like, the people who advocate for this, like, I opt out of, like, society's rules thing with, like, the voting stuff or the law or, like, sovereign citizens, they're so ego-driven, they actually think the world revolves around them. If they just simply have to inform the police that they do not agree with the laws and they have opted out. And here's their shit they printed out at home that says they're allowed to do this, and they believe they will be able to get away with it. They genuinely believe they have the authority to do this. They are that full of themselves. I'm gonna skip to, like, once this guy starts melting down.
Yeah.
Okay, sir, it's a simple question. Do you have a valid driver's license?
Right there's all my paperwork I got.
Okay.
She's coming in.
He's got someone on the phone, like, yelling at the cops
Is your middle name Mark?
on speakerphone.
Well, because he's got it right here. He's got the paperwork in his hand.
All we're trying to do is just identify it, that's it, and then send you on your way. Is that your last name?
Yep.
Okay, is your ID through Florida?
Yep,
What
Florida.
state is it from?
I told you. I see a place. Oh, that's Florida. I recognize Florida. I've lived in Florida most of my life. If I see a setting, like if I was teleported somewhere random and I woke up in the middle of the woods in Florida, I would immediately recognize I'm in Florida. I could tell by the dirt, the plants, the sky, the fucking light, because I know what the sun looks like in Florida at this time of day, because the the point on the planet that it's in is so different than how the sun looks like in this time of day in California and Washington. I can tell. I can tell it's Florida. Tiny little fucking things. I can feel when I'm in Florida or seeing something that's in Florida.
I'm right here. Yep.
What state is it from?
Anyway, well, this isn't a sovereign citizen segment, but I just kind of wanted to showcase. This is typically what I think of when I hear people say, I opt out of this framework, this system.
While those who subscribe to the logic of existing superstructures, our political systems and the electoral process, will insist on how simple and obvious just voting is, that can't change the fact that the desire not to vote is a seed by which a radical desire to change society...
By the way, we have yet to have any indication, by the way, that this person has ever voted before, because if you've ever voted before, you would know, like, because you would presumably read the ballot, that you're not just voting for president and vice president or who leads, like, which party is currently, like, the head of parliament or whatever the fuck. You literally have tons of individual issues on a state level and a federal level and all sorts of referendums and House seats, shit like that, and representatives that you're voting for further down the sheet. So it's not even that when you don't go and vote, you're just giving up on not voting in the election. You're also refusing to vote on actual policies. Like, let's say there's a policy. Let's say they're going to decriminalize marijuana. That's going to be on the ballot in your area. Obviously not the case for Zegzizi, but a thing that's more likely in a lot of, like, in America. And that's on the ballot for your state. And that's got to win on the ballot. If you don't go and vote for that, you are basically refusing to act as part of the effort to, like, add a vote in that area. Mind you, that's going to affect people's lives substantially, just simply going out and voting yes on that policy, decriminalizing weed. How many innocent people, particularly if you are an intersectional the person who views this issue intersectionally, how many innocent black people and Hispanic people who just had a little bit of weed on them, just like everybody else does, white people smoke weed at the same rate, have been policed at a higher rate and thus incarcerated at a higher rate, given harsher sentencing at a higher rate, and all that would basically, well, not all of that, but a lot of that would be helped simply by decriminalizing weed. It's not just a matter of, oh, weed's legal now, but it's also a matter of you've now improved shitloads of people's lives who aren't going to have to worry about having their lives ruined because they had some weed in their pocket when they were 16. But no, just don't go vote, because all you vote on the ballot is the president and the vice president. Clearly, that's all you vote on the ballot. You just don't support either genocide denier. Don't vote. It's like, has this person ever seen a ballot in their lives? Like, have they ever actually voted? How old is Zegzizi? I don't know. I'm gonna be honest that they kind of look like they could be 28 or 18. So I actually don't know if they've ever voted before.
Can grow. Once this rejection bursts to the surface, an incredibly effective path to radicalize these people is to take those base feelings and turn them into a cohesive political worldview. This plays on the same dynamic we saw in 2020 over abolishing the police. An at the time immediately intuitive idea that cleared the way to radical thinking, yet also made no sense within the framework.
So we're dealing with someone here who is on the abolish the police train. Not even the defund the police train, but unironically, the abolish the police train. There are just a lot of lefties who don't give a fuck about doing anything. They just want to virtue signal about how lefty they are. And it's like, hey, look, I am so against all this injustice. I'm not even going to participate in the systems that are enabling them, even if they allow me to reduce the amount of injustice. I'm that woke. I'm that virtuous. It's like, no, you're not. Like, the fact you're doing nothing about it does not make you virtuous.
Of existing society. And today, this type of demand takes the form of something far simpler, of not having to support genocide. What threatens this budding radicalism is that it must immediately...
Hey, I wonder if that logic of not supporting genocide carries over to taxes. Hey, are you not going to pay your taxes? Obviously, Zegzizi doesn't live in America, so, like, taxes are just, I think in, like, the UK, they're just pulled straight, like, calculated and pulled straight out for you. Are you going to carry that forward with taxes? I assume you're British. Britain is currently, like, backing Israel. I'm pretty sure. Are you going to not pay taxes? American lefties, are you going to, like, not pay taxes to the IRS because that tax money goes to fund Israel? You don't want to support genocide, right? You want to opt out? Are you going to not pay taxes? I'm sure you'll be fine. Yeah, so, like, this logic absolutely doesn't follow. It is, like, on its face fucking ridiculous. There is no way to actually opt out of supporting genocide if you are a citizen of a country that is currently engaging in said genocide in your worldview, because if you aren't paying taxes, you're breaking the law, and you're either going to have to pay them or eventually go to prison, I think. So, yeah, this logic is fucking ridiculous. It's all just internet LARP. It's all internet LARP, not a fucking hint of unserious.
clash against the facts and logic of existing society, which demands that these alternatives are born fully formed and able to meet standards which they're trying to move past to begin with. If we don't vote for the Democrats, how will we beat the Republicans? If we don't have the...
You won't, and the Republicans are literally running on the platform of destroying democracy with Project 2025. I saw a lefty account the other day post that Project 2025 is a conspiracy theory akin to QAnon, made up by, like, Democrats to scare left-wing people into voting Democrat. Damn, guys. Look at this QAnon conspiracy theory. Look at this QAnon tier conspiracy theory, guys. Man, the Democrats just made this up. They just totally made this up in order to scare people into voting Democrat. Is it enough for conservatives to win elections? Or it is not enough for conservatives to win elections? If we're going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both a governing agenda and the right people in place, ready to carry this agenda out on day one of the next conservative administration. This is the goal of Project 2025 Presidential Transition Project. The project will build on 4 pillars that will collectively pave the way for an effective conservative administration. And it goes on to explain it's all about literally destroying our democracy. So, Yeah, literally QAnon's tier conspiracy theory, apparently. The fact is, content creators like this and anybody on the left that wants to, like, attack the Democrats and, like, say, look how bad the Democrats are, necessarily has to do apologia for the right. That, like, even not, I'm not saying they're doing it just by attacking the Democrats. They're doing apologia for the right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, eventually, necessarily, to keep up their like attacks against the Democrats, they end up saying something that is akin to the right isn't so bad, the Republicans aren't so bad, one way or the other. They eventually inevitably have to defend the Republicans in order to go so hard against the Democrats as they do.
The police, how will we prevent crime? It's the job of superstructures like the media and the political system to forcibly drag these intuitive desires down into the mud of policy and electoral pragmatism, where they lose any radical potential.
I know, talking about policy is so boring and hard. It sucks having to read those news articles that come out every day, because they're always talking about a new potential bill that may or might not pass. It might just be dead in the water, or maybe not. It's so tiring. Can't we all just opt out of this and talk about fun internet culture war stuff and just not vote and let Trump win? So everything, it's just, this is literally a child's view of politics. Grow the fuck up.
This was the fate of abolishing the police the moment it became defund the police, which, ironically enough, in trading in its radical content to be more appealing to conventional politics, did a far worse job at grasping anybody as a position than abolition ever did. Voting is—
Hold on, I have to know. Hold on, I can't watch any more of this because it's all virtue signaling. I have to know. I have to know. Okay. I went to Zigzeezy's Twitter. Immediately see the dumbest shit ever. Disagreeing with Soak Done Left. That's pretty much all you need to see. Today I will vote third party. Clueless votes third party. Republican, winner. Death camps. Winner by 80,000 votes. Democrats 79,999 votes, one to the independent. Obviously, the meme is a little bit like exaggerating, but that has actually happened. Obviously, the most famous example is Al Gore. Al Gore would have won if Green Party or not Green Party. I don't know if the Green Party existed yet. Did it exist yet? I literally interviewed Howie Hawkins on stream, guys. I feel so fucking bad that I don't remember when the Green Party was founded. Oh, how embarrassing. You guys know that, right? I interviewed Howie Hawkins on stream back in 2020 when he was running for president. I totally forgot I have interviewed a presidential candidate. That's crazy. That's crazy. Cherry set that up. Big shout out to Cherry. Cherry set that up through and through. Cherry was like, hey, don't talk about this until it's ready to happen. Please agree to this. I think I can get you an interview with Howie Hawkins. And I was like, yeah, get me an interview with Howie Hawkins. And Cherry got me a fucking interview with Howie Hawkins. Yeah, it existed back then. Yeah, like, Al Gore legitimately would have won, I'm pretty sure, had those third-party votes gone to him instead of Bush. Because, like, holy fuck was it slim. They did a recount. It was so fucking slim. And Al Gore, like, that was the moment where I think if there is, like, a timeline reality split type deal in our universe and we managed to end up on a bad timeline split, I think that's when it happened, was when we lost the 50-50 dice roll on who won that election by a margin. Was it Al Gore, who would have, like, actually seriously turned the tides on climate change decades ago? Or was it Bush, who would have, doomed us to where we're at today? Like, everything fucking, for the most part, most of the shit we're dealing with today traces back to Bush. A lot of it goes back to Reagan, but Bush is the most relevant. Like, Bushonomics, Bush trickle-down economics fucked us bad. Not just the 2008 financial crisis, but we've never really fully recovered from that. Like, a lot of things got made much worse by Bush. I feel like that election, it was the 50-50 dice roll that we lost, and we're on the bad timeline. If it was any event that was the dimensional fucking shift or whatever, that was the one. That was the fucking one. Because the motherfuckers didn't go out and vote, we ended up on the bad timeline. Not to mention, look at what happened after one Trump presidency. Conservative supermajority Supreme Court. Bye-bye, Roe v. Wade. And that's just the start. Lifetime terms, by the way. That's just one term of a Republican. Now we've got a lifetime of those motherfuckers on the Supreme Court destroying rights unilaterally, with no ability for us to push back realistically unless the entire federal government decides to disregard the decisions of the Supreme Court. It could happen. It is possible. It has never happened as far as I know. Maybe wrong there, but I can't recall a time it's happened. So with that said, fucking vote. Hell, even if you are such a bitchy little whiny-ass baby you don't want to vote on the president, at least go to the fucking, go vote on everything else. Vote on the bills that are local to you, referendums, and, representatives of your local area and state, please, because the election and the ballots are not just about who's president next. I promise you, and I know this isn't something I need to say to anyone who has ever voted before, but to be clear, most of the people who are watching this type of content and possibly falling for it have most certainly never voted before, and don't know that, chances are.